I want you to learn more about our museum's history. I'm going to tell about what we do, and I think it's going to be really good to show this video. But I'd like to tell you from the very outset that we do not have any IT experts and professionals with us. We are doing it everything by ourselves, but we are, however, supported by volunteers. Okay, great. They will put it up. They will make this sound a little bit not that loud because there is no text, and I could actually just share my comments on the go.
Я можу розповідати вже, так?
Так, вона включила, так.
Тому що я не бачу ролика.
So, dear friends, our National Chernobyl Museum is a modern and a dynamic one. It is an awareness building center, and we're telling stories about safety. This is an awareness building institution, and it is a multifunctional organization which puts together science, research, culture, enlightenment, and awareness building with archiving and disseminating stories of the disaster in Chernobyl. And this is probably the heaviest radiological catastrophe in the world with long-lasting aftermath. And that is very different from all the man-caused and natural disasters ever experienced. And this aftermath is still a problem of today. And unfortunately, they will keep reminding us and our descendants for a longer future. And this fact affects all the activities that we perform in our museum. Our museum's mission is to help the mankind realize the scale of the catastrophe through the destinies of thousands of people, the witnesses, victims, survivors, and responders. We want to share the information about the tragedy and not to let the world forget about the aftermath in the future generations. So we need to demonstrate to the whole world that the radiation component of such tragedies are very much reinforced by social and economic effects, triggered by this active, not inactive, and lack of information. So the experience of Chernobyl should not be just the story to be forgotten. This is the story that needs to be disseminated around the world to effectively protect the population and areas from those emergency situations of man-caused and natural footprint. Like I already said, we talked about the slogan of our museum. The grief has its boundaries, but no boundaries has the anxiety. That's the slogan that you can see at the entrance of our museum, to our museum. This is fully in line with our fairs, exhibitions, and expositions like we discussed already today, this morning. Just a bit of history regarding how this museum was created back in 1992. And at its commissioning, I'm going to tell about its impact in the first years. We have been continuing to work under the auspices of the Ministry of Interior. It was created and established with the support of the Kyiv Regional Fire Brigade and Fire Department. They had their museum of pictures and documents to commemorate the courage and the glory of the first responders. They opened that exhibition in their administrative building of the fire department in Podil, Kyiv. And already in 1992, on the 26th of April, again in Podil, in Horiva Lane 1, there's an old building, and it's an architectural site of the beginning of the 20th century that used to be a fire brigade. And it's one of the important archaeological and memorial facilities. In that venue, we opened that facility, the museum. And since then, it was called the National Museum. That building had been specifically renovated for the museum purposes. Those were the first responders who managed to renovate the building. Those were the first responders in that tragedy who had lost a lot of their peers and friends, and many of them were contaminated. And they are still suffering from the radiation sickness and poisoning. But the first exposition that was opened in 92, it listed only 200 artifacts that were primarily dedicated to the deeds of the first responders. But the modern exposition covers almost 1,000 square meters, and we have more than 9,000 artifacts. They demonstrate the chronology of the catastrophe. They tell about the heroic efforts by many people, civilians and military, many representatives of government agencies who tried to remedify the aftermath. I want to draw your attention to the fact that all the artifacts are purely authentic. They were collected from the site. They were purified and desactivated when needed from contamination. But it didn't take 1 year to actually elaborate such a large exposition to comply with the previously set out goals. First of all, some of the documents were classified about the disaster and nuclear power in the Soviet Union, nor we were able to talk freely about the remedies, about the response. And that was not only about documents, but also people were not allowed to share their personal stories about the disaster. They were not allowed to tell the truth and talk about it whatsoever. Those who were working in the disaster site, they had to sign special documents about non-disclosure of any information. And there is one more reason behind this. This is radiation contamination of those artifacts, which had to be cleaned and decontaminated. All those artifacts have been collected over the years. These are the results of our outreach expeditions to the exclusion zone, which we actively started conducting since the beginning of the 90s. There is no good reason to actually now continue to go out there because many other people work there, and everything that we managed to preserve is now being preserved. I mean, all those cultural artifacts and heritage items and spiritual items and artifacts are now presented in our museums. We traveled to Russia and Belarus. We were working with the archives of different institutions, and we were working with the governmental archives, as well as civil society. We collaborated with so many experts on this matter. We've been working a lot with the families, with the family photos and archives from the survivors and responders. And we were collecting information and items from those people who continue to live in the contaminated area. I believe we have something like 1,200 municipalities that are currently being monitored regarding their radiation contamination. So what we are exposing different classified documents, classified maps that were produced by many institutions, both military and interior, the police and firefighters. There are a lot of pictures, photos, dose meters. We have the whole collection of dosage meters in our museum. We have a lot of print publications protective gear, personal items, historic relics, and other unique items and artifacts. A lot of documents exposed by the museum have been actually disclosed for the first time ever. For instance, we have quite a large collection of personal letters from 1986 that the responders have been writing to their families despite the ban. Also, we have the handwritten diaries and notes. Those are unique documents and artifacts that have to be studied continuously. We've been doing a lot of work to collect documents from the responders because our vision is to show the events then through the personal destinies and stories. All that was reflected in creating the unique database in 1996. We generated a lot of information from the responders. That database became available in 1997, and then 10 years later, it was made available online. And thanks to that, it has become interactive. Through that database, we are keeping in touch with many generations, with their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, who also participate in handing over even more artifacts. So we collect even more artifacts these days. Even yesterday, I received the recent document and questionnaires filled out by the responders, just yesterday. I'm sure these historic bonds and memory will never be stopped and interrupted. After years, it's going to be even stronger. Regarding the archived documents that we have, you clearly know probably that all the documents related to the disaster in the Chernobyl nuclear power plant and the relief measures used to be classified. They were not allowed for dissemination and were stored in special archives, the first departments of different institutions and agencies. In some of the agencies and institutions, those papers were mixed. They were disposed because of them being contaminated. That was one of the ways to actually conceal the documents and never to display them to the public. And then already in the independence times, some of the documents ended up here in the museums, and we keep storing them for the history of our stocks. So we have around 65,000 documents like this. Not all of them are yet prepared for exposure and for demonstration. But I also have to mention that we don't have a lot of people in the museum. Over the last 30 years, we've had probably 5 to 7 experts. Now we also have 7 people working at the museum. And all these people, they do a lot of research and studies of the topic. They're seeking the different scientific attributes. They're working as tour guides as well. So we develop those people as a one soldier army or one army soldiers, so universal soldiers, so to say. Over the years of the museum's operation, we received more than 2 million people out of 120 countries around the globe. We welcomed presidents of our country and other countries, heads of parliaments, international missions, including the United Nations. We also welcomed the then UN Secretary Kofi Annan, representatives of the PACE, OECD, OSCE, international experts, including IAEA experts, visited our place a lot. And we received a lot of International Foundation representatives. They not only visited the museum, but we also collaborate with them quite closely with those organizations. Every year before the pandemic, the museum had been visited by 60 to 80,000 people. annually, and in some of the years we had 100,000 people. 60% of our visitors are foreigners. And for them, we designed specialized audio guides available in 9 different languages. We have Japanese and Turkish languages, apart from the most popular ones in the world. No other museum in Ukraine offers so many services, and we're proud of that. Because, our visitors are also quite specific because there are a lot of individual visits, not only in groups. And this topic has to be provided clearly to the people from the standpoint of information, and it's best to provide this information in their mother tongues. Because the majority of people can speak English in the world, but they have quite a basic command of this. But they would appreciate not only to walk around the halls and look at the exhibits. They need to know how it happened, who was engaged, because right now there's a lot of information available online that only the firefighters were the heroes and they were the ones who really responded first. And we are very much concerned about this information because this is a complete fake. Everybody is trying to comment on this, and everybody seems to know how that had happened. But our employees are always guarding those fake facts. So we are trying to share our comments online if there's a lot of fake information spread, which is very much over-exaggerated. Because sometimes myths are born like this, and we're trying to actually destroy the myths. Back in 2020, due to the pandemic of COVID-19 and the lockdown measures, we had to switch to online operation. Before that, we had never been online for objective reasons because we don't have a lot of people and we could not cope with the workload. We could not even handle all the aspects, including the internet community. During the last year when the museum was locked, we were normally working online. We actually tried to prepare some of the important exhibits, prepare some of the interesting stories shared by some of the people involved. And online, we received 835,000 visitors. This is a real breakthrough for our museum and for this matter completely. I think this is an achievement to be proud of. The National Chernobyl Museum is a historic place which professionally combines its exhibits as in terms of traditional artifacts and spatial installations. The author of this visionary concept was the people's artist of Ukraine, Anatoly Haidamaka. And together with him, we've continuously cooperated and still do. He helps us a lot in creating our art exhibitions. And we've always been in close touch with him. Over the last years, since we were opened, the museum has been developing continuously. It's not that we prepare one exhibition in 1992 and still showing it today. It's not the way it works with us. We have been constantly updating our exhibits. We have added some of the modern items and means and channels of communication through softwares, different interactive installations and media solutions that expanded our exposition and also implemented some of the augmented reality components. We continue doing so as we open and discover other documents and collect new evidence. Even today, we continue to receive new artifacts. And during the pandemic as well, we were cooperating with a lot of people. And thanks to the internet and thanks to the social media, we established very good connections and received a lot of artifacts. Thank you ever so much, but your time is up, unfortunately. You exceeded the time by 6 minutes. I still want to thank you very much for this. And also regarding those bonds and connections, I'm sure people are aware here that you've done 2 online exhibitions. Yes, we created a new platform. We have an old website and we also have the brand new one, which we developed last year. And there you can find our interactive projects. We already run several projects, not just 2, but more. There is one interactive project called The Bell that we introduced at the end of 2019. And our visitors haven't yet explored it quite actively. So we partly moved it online.